Welcome to the Centurion 360 podcast with PR marketing and crisis management expert Michael Bilello.
And welcome to the Centurion 360 podcast. I am still your host, Michael Bilello. This is episode 3. You can follow us on Twitter at Centurion360. You can send us an email, info at Centurion-strategies.com. Today's guest is Benson Riseman. Benson Riseman is the co-founder of Green Dot Corporation. For those of us not familiar with Green Dot Corporation, they were the first prepaid reloadable Visa and MasterCard available at retail. And this was a game changer for those of you, again, who aren't aware of this, aware of Green Dot Corporation. This was a game changer in the payment industry, especially during the credit crunch. And this is a corporation that continues to grow. So we hope that Benson will spend some time with us and share with us his experience from literally starting this company on a piece of paper between he and his partner, kicking it around as an idea, and then developing it into something that in 2007 began receiving capital infusions from capital groups like Sequoia, the legendary Sequoia, who handpicks and selects some of the best and brightest companies out of California, Cisco, Zappos, I mean, you name it. They've certainly got a very impressive list of companies who have done very well. And Green Dot Corporation is certainly a company that's done very well, continues to do very well. 2010, they went public. They are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Ticker symbol is GDOT. Prior to that, Benson spent 20 years in broadcasting. So for those of us who manage broadcasting budgets on behalf of clients, we'll talk to him about the broadcasting industry and the technology evolution there. So two very, very interesting industries. As far as I'm concerned, payment industry, that's very tech heavy right now, continues to evolve. Broadcasting continue to evolve. Benson was involved in both of those. And then obviously for those of us interested in startups, again, to take a company from literally an idea to a publicly traded company is very impressive, and to do it with the success that he has had, and then to learn more about his entrepreneurial spirit, he doesn't stop. He does not stop. I sit on the board with Benson at the University of Tampa's Entrepreneurship Center. Anytime I could spend even a minute with this guy, I certainly take that opportunity to do so, because he's very infectious. Again, by way of his entrepreneurial mindset, he makes you want to hit the whiteboards pretty hard. He'll spend probably about an hour with us, so that's a lot of time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I know that I'm certainly going to enjoy myself asking him questions. And again, if you ever have any questions that you'd like to ask, on Twitter at Centurion360, email info at Centurion-strategies.com, and we'll connect with Benson in just a few. Before we connect with Benson, though, this is the portion of the podcast where I pick something for the 24-hour news cycle and give my uninvited, underappreciated opinion as a public relations, marketing, and crisis management professional. And the one that I chose for this week is Starbucks Race Together public relations campaign. And so what I hope we get out of this one is, as if we need any coaching here, is this is a sort of a not what to do. And when George Schultz, who is the boss of Starbucks, selected this topic, and he's been known to select social issues and then engage the company in some type of PR and marketing campaign that either focuses on it or addresses it in some way or form. He did that with gun control not too long ago, where he declared that all Starbucks were no carry zones. So this is not the first time Starbucks has engaged in a social issue. But Race Together being a campaign that was encouraging baristas, if you're not familiar with it, not to go over this again, but it was encouraging baristas to engage customers on the issue of race relations in America. And what they were hoping to do was to engage the customer and foster some type of interaction. And by way of the interaction, the customer would then have some affinity to the Starbucks brand, saying, when I go to Starbucks, not only do I get to have a great cup of coffee or a great mochaccino, but I also get to feel smart about engaging in a social issue. I kind of see what they were going for, but the way in which they executed the campaign, not to beat a dead horse, was pretty bad. It's pretty bad, especially when you're Starbucks, especially when you're playing at that level. So we'll go through some of the do's and don'ts, what went wrong with the campaign. But right from go, to select a subject that is pretty controversial, politics and religion would sort of be in the same bucket, I think, of things that you would definitely try to avoid. So initially, some people might respect the fact that they had the courage to even engage this topic. I kind of see where you're coming from, but the way in which they executed it, the way in which they didn't respect it, they used it almost as a cheap ploy because it was abandoned within 48 hours of moving into the campaign, I believe. Just shows you that it definitely wasn't a good one. So let's just go through it real quick. Howard Schultz, boss of Starbucks, told baristas to write "race together" on patrons' cups in an effort to stimulate debate about racism. Twitter users quickly branded, as they often do, in a wave of mockery. So the hashtag, and you have to keep this in mind when you're starting a hashtag campaign or any campaign that you involve a hashtag, is this could get hijacked. My hashtag could get hijacked. So I have to make sure that when I execute the campaign in its entirety, that it's respected. So when they didn't execute the campaign correctly and the director of communications just abandoned post and took down his Twitter account, people took liberty with the hashtag race together. They also took liberty with the hashtag new Starbucks drinks. So if you look at both those hashtags, it derailed and made a mockery of what I think Mr. Schultz really intended on being a rather serious public relations and marketing campaign that would leave Starbucks and its customers feeling better about themselves, right? Because at the end of a PR marketing campaign, you want people to feel, your customers to feel appreciated, to feel engaged, to feel unique, to feel special. And I'm not sure that when people are going to grab a cup of coffee, this is the best way to do that. If you want to foster, and this is just my humble opinion, Starbucks, better customer interaction and engagement and brand recall, focus on the product. Focus on getting me a cup of coffee in a reasonable amount of time. Focus on making sure that the half and half at the condiment station isn't lukewarm. Focus on the cups that when they get very hot are flimsy. It may result in someone going through the drive-thru and having a venti coffee hot launched through the window of their car and onto their crotch. Not that happened to me or anything. I'm just saying, trying to erase that memory from my mind. But you know it's bad when a Starbucks PR executive is forced, as he says, I was forced to delete a Twitter account because he felt overwhelmed by a volume of tenor on the discussion. And we're talking about Corey Dubrow. So again, probably not the best way to look to engage your customers. Definitely a challenge. I don't think anyone thinks of race as much as, say, politicians do, or a media producer does, or a what's referred to as a race celebrity does. I think most of us grow up throughout our day without even thinking about race until someone reminds us. And to be reminded of that first thing in the morning, or during a break, and further be taxed to think about complex social issues and problems, it's not something that you want to do. It's not going to create a good environment. And when you look at PR marketing campaigns, for those of us who plan and execute those for a living, you want to be able to control as much of the interaction as you possibly can. So to send baristas out there to talk to customers about, again, a very sensitive topic, there's a lot of things you can't control there. More importantly, you also want to, through some testing, look at what the outcome is going to be. Because if you can't predict the outcome, then you can't really predict your return on an investment. And these campaigns are not cheap. So I'm not sure why they chose to do this, but I assure you that most people in America don't think of race as much as, again, politicians or someone who's in media production or a race celebrity. Most of us grew up throughout our days interacting just fine. There are no problems. We're not even thinking about that, again, until someone reminds us. And so for Starbucks to take that opportunity, again, in my humble opinion, probably not the smartest. the other thing that you have to really keep in mind is you have to prepare when executing a PR marketing campaign. You have to prepare your internal team for rollout. So at the corporate level, for Starbucks in this case, for you to plan this in your ivory tower, if you will, and then expect baristas to execute the program at the field level without any type of preparation, and we know this, there was no preparation, there was no training, no special guidance, and expect them to do it, expect them to execute this Race Together campaign, and then just moments into the campaign, while these baristas are doing this, they look behind them, and in the corporate office, your senior vice president of communications abandoned post. He took his Twitter account down. He's like, I'm out. I can't do this. Well, if you can't do that virtually from corporate office, then how do you expect your internal team to do that on the ground level, on the field level? And if you don't prepare them to execute this campaign, you're certainly never going to get a return on investment. Not to go back to return on investment, but that's what we're held to. What was the return on the investment? We hear it all the time from clients. So for them not to prepare the internal team was a huge mistake. So remember, when you're unveiling a PR and marketing campaign, you want to make sure your internal team is prepared and is able, capable, and committed to execute. Furthermore, as a leader, you have to remain committed. You're either in or you're not. But to abandon your post, to take down your Twitter account, that's the physical equivalent of shaving your head, putting on a fake mustache, grabbing your passport, and heading to Panama. That's the physical equivalent of what Corey DeBroa did on Twitter. And not to pick on him, in my humble opinion, from our just from experience, you can't do that. You can't abandon posts. It's a bad move to take down your Twitter account, and it doesn't. You're not leading by example. So from my perspective, a few things to consider. Again, make sure that your campaigns are creative. Obviously, be creative. Don't be generic. Be creative. Be unique. Be bold. But when you test out your campaign, make sure it's predictable. Make sure you prep your internal team. If you're the leader of the campaign, make sure you're committed. Make sure you see it through. If things go bad, you've got to make them right. But abandoning your post, taking down your Twitter account is never the right move. And from a crisis management perspective, that's perhaps the worst thing you could do, because you're it's the physical equivalent of just leaving, just trying to disappear, hiding. And that's not what you want to do. It's certainly not what you want to do. We know it was Schultz's idea. We know that Corey DeBroa wasn't really committed. So this is most likely Schultz handing his senior vice president of communications a campaign and saying, run with this. I want you to run with this. So my question to you, for those of you who work in public relations, marketing, advertising, you work for an agency, for those of you who work in a large corporation, your boss tells you to do something. He says, I have this great idea for a campaign. You're never going to believe it. Sit down. I got to tell you about it. And it's a bad idea. And as you're gaming it in your head, as you're working through the process, as you're working through the procedure, you begin to see things that may not go the way that you want them to go, the way that the campaign intends it to go. So you start to break it out by way of the customer interaction. Okay, if I prep the internal team, what does that preparation look like? What does that playbook look like? When they interact with the customer, what do I predict my customer's reaction to this issue or this engagement, this campaign? What's it going to be? And in the call to action, how are we getting a return on that investment? And then looking at social media and working a social media model. What's our hashtag going to be? How is this going to be interpreted? How could this be used? How could this be misused? All these things you've got to work through them. And when you think it's a bad idea, I also think that you have to be prepared to lose your job. And that's been told to me time and time again. Be prepared to lose your job if you think something is wrong. Again, who's the onus is on who? Is the onus on Schultz to know better? Is the onus on Corey to be the communications and marketing consigliere and tell the boss, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is right. This is not going to go well. We should not do this. you got to be prepared to lose your job. If we're in a meeting and we have a client who doesn't who presents something and they're very passionate and attached to their idea, and as we start to game these things, or we're able to immediately reference something that we've done previously and we think it's going to be bad, you've got to have the intestinal fortitude to tell the client, to tell your boss that it's not going to go well, and here's why, and try to talk your way or walk your way through it with the customer, with the client, or with your boss. But to execute it and have it blow up is far worse, in my humble opinion, because this is something that I think Starbucks is going to be cleaning up for a very long time. Corey's a very successful and respected communications and public relations executive, so he's going to have to answer to this when he goes to his next job, or he starts an agency and is pitching a client. People are going to be curious about this. Did you say anything? Did you raise a concern? Why did you abandon post? So the bottom line, folks, here is don't get yourself in that situation. If you think something is wrong, even though you think you're saving your job or you're saving that month's retainer, then this will cost you in the future. So you have to be prepared to lose your job. I'm not saying be combative and don't be open to ideas, and don't be open to engaging in a very healthy process that works through some of the challenges and creates a campaign that in fact is impactful. But there are things that we can learn from the Starbucks debacle that will save you time and money and even reputation in the long run. And never underestimate Twitter. Never underestimate that Twitter account that's just the Twitter egg, has 35 users, because the anonymity this person enjoys is what allows them to be so bold. And they can really derail things if there isn't a strong leader involved, and there isn't somebody who's guiding and garnering respect for the hashtag and the campaign. If the populace, if the public if they get it and they're enthusiastic and they're properly engaged, then I think social media can insulate you from the person that just enjoys making trouble on Twitter, the person with the egg, 35 Twitter followers, but still can be rather disruptive with the hashtag or disruptive with social media engagement. So keep that in mind. You've got to game social media on its own. You can't just include it in the same gaming session that you would for in-store activation, because it's completely different. It's its own animal. And I like to think that if it was gauged, if it was gamed properly, that they wouldn't have gone through with it. But if you want some entertainment, go ahead and look at hashtag Race Together on Twitter. And then also, I believe, hashtag New Starbucks Drinks. New Starbucks Drinks was a sampling of just how creative, destructive, disruptive Twitter got with Starbucks Race Together campaign. And again, it wasn't from go. It was doomed. But then after they executed it, when your leader abandoned ship, it's pretty much over. You're either, that's the other thing is, I'll leave you with this and we'll move on. You're either all in or you're out, but you can't, there's no in between, because the public will pick up on that. And then again, not to further empower the disruptive forces of Twitter, but they'll pick up on it as well. And then it's game over. Speaking of crisis management, one more thing I want to touch upon: hot mics. I recently was with two clients doing morning media. So morning media, you get there at 5:30 in the morning, and you may have an hour and a half before the actual media hit. This is very typical with morning shows. They want you there early. They want you prepped. They want everybody in the green rooms lined up so the producer could see them, and then they start bringing people on. They mic you up fairly early, and so a lot of times you have to remind yourself, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. In fact, I think if you've been doing this a very long time, it's probably worse. But on two occasions, we left the studio after doing the media hit. 2 hours goes by. Everyone's there very early, so you're up at 4, in the studio at 6. Maybe your media hits at 7:45. You do thank yous and pleasantries after, so you're leaving the studio at 8:30, 8:45. All this time goes by. You're in the car. You're driving. This is on two separate occasions. Both clients kept the microphones on them, and they're on. So the issue of hot mic always comes up. Just a little tip. Write something down, put a rubber band on your wrist, set an iPhone reminder, Remind the client, remind everybody, remind the producer. They forget as well. They're tired. Remind yourself that you have the microphone on and you take the microphone off, and you also remember hot mic. Don't say anything that you don't want, obviously being heard by other parties. And the reason why I bring this up is because obviously for those of us who are familiar with the Robert Durst situation, this was the gentleman who will have a tough time convincing a judge that he's mumbling in an open mic in a bathroom, that he basically admitted to killing 2 people. So he's shooting this documentary with HBO. He has his microphone on. He goes to the restroom with the microphone on, and in there he basically says, "What the hell did I do? I killed them all, of course." So this guy, Robert Durst, again, Google it if you're not familiar, during the shooting of an HBO documentary, while mic'd up, goes into the restroom, and this was a crime that he committed, some decades ago, and he essentially, admits to a murder. So that's sort of the extreme of the hot mic. Maybe during the political season, we'll have some communications directors on who will share some hot mic stories that are probably a little bit more funny than admitting to double homicides. But hot mic is serious, and if it happens, if it happened to me just 2 times within 2 weeks, that's a pretty high percentage. And I just want to throw a tip out there for those of you who are worried about hot mics. When you go there, especially those morning shows, and you get mic'd up, set a reminder. Don't forget your client's mic'd up. And if you say anything in the car ride, leaving the studio, make sure you immediately apologize. Okay, so this brings us to, in a few minutes, we'll have Benson joining us. Again, co-founder of Green Dot, largest issuer of reloadable prepaid Visa and MasterCard debit cards. These products are available at more than 60,000 retail stores. CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, Radio Shack, Dollar Tree. Well, Radio Shack should probably not be on the list, huh? Walmart. Green Dot also transferred individuals' direct deposit funds, such as Social Security payments and tax returns from the U.S. government to personal bank. He's a co-founder along with Steve Streit. Founded in 1999. The milestone that they hit, I think that's very impressive, is July 2010. They go public on the New York Stock Exchange. That's G. Their ticker symbol is GDOT. In 2003, they get a capital infusion from the Sequoia team. Michael Moritz, who was involved with Google, Zappos, Yahoo. This is Green Dot Corporation is sort of, if you're involved with startups, if you have a startup company that's just an idea on paper, this is exactly how you want it to go. But what I think we're going to hear is that it's not easy, not predictable, not what you think. But what you learn along the way, what you learn through that process is what's valuable. And that's why gentlemen like Benson are so valuable to this podcast, are so valuable to universities and boards because of their expertise, their experience, but more importantly, their willingness to share, their willingness to tell other people how they can do it as well. That's the key. And Benson's always been great in that regard. So again, my interaction with him has always been very brief, just because of the nature of, he's busy, I'm busy. But when we get together for board meetings, what brief interaction I do have with him, I'm always obviously appreciative, and I pay attention, I listen. I'm pretty intent when listening, and it's just going to be awesome to have him on for 45 minutes. Maybe we can squeeze an hour out. That would be tremendous. But great guy, energetic, successful, tremendous career, and I really hope you enjoy listening to Benson Riseman. Benson Riseman, thank you for joining the Centurion 360 podcast. I do appreciate your time. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Awesome. So let me ask you a question. Every time I see you, you're always energetic. You're always engaging. Does Vegas have anything to do with the energy level? Does it help you stay at the top of your game?
Vegas is a live city, nonstop, day and night. Old people stay young and rich people turn poor. I'm all the above.
I've never heard it put that way, but it makes complete sense. Well,
yeah, I'm really fortunate to be in a place, and I think there's some tax advantages in being in Vegas. It's a really friendly small business town and really pretty close-knit community, so it makes it for a nice home for me.
Yeah, we both do business in California, so whenever you can find a strategic location to get into California, do your business, and then get out of California, that may or may not be a good thing.
No, and California for the weather and the beaches and the lifestyle, it's great. But there's a lot of places in the world to live, and you can be happy anywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, definitely good. So you've had a great career, but you get your start in sales. How has sales made you a better business person, a better entrepreneur, if you will?
Well, sales, I think, is just an extension of a person's personality. It's a conversation with a purpose, with a goal in mind. And it's also taught me that there's always a solution. To me, sales, not unlike what I learned in the entrepreneurial world, it's the ultimate puzzle. It's kind of like you lay out all the pieces on the table. You go through spurts where you say, like, I got to be missing a piece. There's something that's not here. And then, but you realize that there is a solution. You realize that if you keep looking, you keep working at it, no matter how much you think you're missing a piece, it's all there, and it's there to create. And when you do, it creates this big picture. I think it also has gone a long way in really priming you and giving you an awareness of rejection, how to handle it. Gives you a tough skin. It also has created a great respect and understanding of that it's a process. It's not just a herky. There's actually a process. There's a beginning, end, middle, and end to it all. If you try to speed it up or pull it away, you realize that maybe it doesn't work as well. So I think it gives you an understanding and respect that there's a process going on. And also, you can't take it personally. Challenge is a great thing. Some people wilt in it and some people grow in it. And both environments allow you that opportunity. And maybe, lastly, it's really about the art of communication. It's the importance of the words you use, the theatrics of creating emotion, or in both cases, it's the thinking on your feet. It's reacting to, whoever might be on the other side of the table. And there's no substitute for being in front of the customer, whether it's getting an order for something you're selling or financing for your business.
Yeah, and the best salesmen really focus on the client. And a buzz term used a lot now we hear is client-centric. And I think some people say it, other people live it. I read a recent article in the Wall Street Journal that shared a story about you used to put your clients' photos in your office. Tell me what was the method there?
Well, I had fortunately, I've been a product of a number of great bosses over the course of my time that you pick and choose the best and worst from everybody. And one of them I went with her on some sales calls, and she had this Polaroid picture. I know it's old school, but once upon a time, there was actually this thing that you take a picture and a film came out. And I would see how the people would react to that. And it said like, that's kind of interesting. Later on in years, when I was kind of looking to find my own brand, so to speak, my own way, my own connection, I recalled that and I said, maybe there's a way to use it. And so I took the concept when I started selling nationally in radio. I did national sales in radio. And at the end of each sales call, I would take 3 pictures. One picture, it created an intimate bond, but one picture I would give to them right then. One picture I would send back as in a thank you note to create a bond. One picture I would keep and hang on the wall in my office. And the third picture I would keep for another point in time when, believe it or not, if there ever was a conflict or I felt like the relationship was falling apart, I would find a way to send a note, include the picture, and remind them that we actually had a bond, don't take it personal, and so on. And with that, when I used on the wall was kind of an interesting tactic for me because I like to visualize. And by putting pictures on the wall, I know even though I had a room with 3 walls and each was filled with these pictures of different sorts, whenever I would talk to somebody on the phone, I would actually look at their picture and it would create for me, just mentally, just for Benson, a psychological connection where I felt like I was really talking to them. And my demeanor, my attitude, my response, my body language all had to reflect that because to me, I was in front of the customer. It also created a great sense of competitive advantage because when people would come in my office, they would see me enthralled in all these people. and they would say like, holy, this guy is like wired, and how does he do it? And a sense of success. And also when those clients would come in, they would be really appreciative, and it would create this sense of bond that, wow, you thought enough of me to hang me on your wall, and even my kids don't do that. So I think that all kind of added to a very nice kind of touch, and the importance of people is so crucial in every endeavor. So that was one way to reflect it.
No, it makes complete sense. Obviously, when you get into your office, and not every day is it that you enter your office with the right mindset, but when you see your clients, when you constantly remind yourself on why you're there and who you're doing it for, certainly I feel like that can get you in the right mindset. It's no different than Notre Dame, play like a champion. When they leave the locker room, it's just getting you in the right mindset. So that's very interesting. I certainly appreciate you sharing with that. That's almost genius in its own right.
It's a little harder to fall asleep in your office when you have thousands of people staring at you every day.
Yes. Now let me ask you a question. Behind closed doors, did you ever throw anything at anyone's photo on the wall?
Well, I didn't throw anything at anybody, but there were certainly pictures I looked at more than others.
I bet.
In different ways, I might add.
I bet. Broadcasting, an industry you spent almost 20 years in.
20 years in.
Constantly changing, constantly evolving. Formats are always resetting. What does that mean to those of us who are managing broadcasting budgets on behalf of clients?
Well, of course, the broadcast industry has changed significantly over the course of time. I'll refer to myself as old school as far as my contemporaries today. Once upon a time, quick history lesson, there were 3 national channels on television. There was radio, newspaper, television, and billboard. And I was born into the industry in that era when it was just starting to switch to a more customizable medium. And I spent 20 years in radio in my life. Now the industry has changed tremendously. There was a point in time when radio stations in particular were using less radio and more online, driving people to their website to sell product, to recycle, to stream, to do any host of other activities that were important to their listenership and revenue base. And now I think that there is a real opportunity for retailers, although tedious in as much, for advertisers, in the ability to interactively customize, to be able to find media, find options, whether it be online, whether it be podcasts such as this, whether it be blogs, whether it be any number of things, and media. New media is born every day. I'm amazed at how you go from anything from every time you look from matchbooks to going to the bathroom and you look up and there's ads in the urinal, to airplanes above, but the tremendous influx of technology and what it's been able to do to customize particular audiences. And that's become crucial in the area of efficiency. And efficiency is so important in being able to not just reach mass, but reach the specific customer. Bentley isn't going to advertise in Walmart, and Walmart isn't going to advertise necessarily in travel and leisure. And there's reasons for that, even though both are very accomplished in their readership and viewership. So, for folks looking to place media, fortunately, there's a whole host of folks who are far more skilled at it than me, who grew up in this age of technology, who embrace it and who actually are the innovators in it. And they can lead them to what options work best for their business to reach their targeted consumers.
Yeah, what's interesting is this technology, the byproduct is a lot of analytics. And analytics, don't get me wrong, are extremely helpful when placing an ad buy or creating a campaign that has components of paid advertising, earned media. But I feel as though technology, when you rely on it too heavily or when you only focus on analytics and you don't actually get out into the markets, you don't actually understand what's happening in these communities. You don't see how people, to your point, are consuming media. Where are they going? What's their leisure? What are their habits? What are their behaviors? Do you see today's generation being a little bit more disconnected than perhaps yourself, being a little bit more old school, where it was all about the bond, all about the connection, all about, being on the street, so to speak? Can we get buried in analytics? Can that make us dumb? I had the good fortune, many people wouldn't think so, of working in the broadcasting industry, stations that were typically rated among the lowest, not the highest.
And the biggest weapon that everybody used in making their sales and generating revenue was the quality, was the quantitative, was the research, was the analytics, was the ratings. And we didn't have any. And so that kind of put me and others like me in a position where we had to think a little differently. We had to get creative. We had to work at theater of the mind. We had to create more personal touches. We had to be in people's face more often. You know, even now to this day, I would offer that no matter what we learn about in the future, no matter what media's come, even if it's transplanted directly into our brain, the single best form of advertising will always be word of mouth. For somebody that you trust to be able to say, I tried this and it works for me, at least clears out all the trash around it and you focus on it. And it allows you to do that. But today, you know, again, being old school and trying to walk the line between being an old fuddy-duddy and being somebody that's contemporarily hip, so to speak, I do find that technology has gotten, I don't know if technology is great, but maybe how it's being used and the amount of leverage put on it, I think is presenting a challenge to society as a whole. People's ability to even interview correctly, people's ability to interact correctly, to make a connection, to actually sit in front of another person without a media screen, or to string sentences along that are not text-like, to actually spell out words as opposed to abbreviate. The concept of some schools and educational facilities now doing away with cursive writing because it's archaic. I mean, these are the roots of our culture. This is what communication is. I mean, does that mean that some of the greatest art pieces, now many people view art as, gee, rather than going to a museum or trying to paint myself, I'll just whip it up on a digital screen. And there's nothing wrong with that, and it's great art. But there's a respect and understanding. That's where we came from, and the connection that it is. It's the understanding. Everything about that is unique. I mean, I'm not about having people go through challenges needlessly and suffer needlessly, but it is the journey. It is all about the journey, and because knowing how to walk that journey is going to take you not just to the destination that you're trying to get to, but to any destination you'll ever want to go to. And if you don't know, I used to say to my son, who was always looking for shortcuts, and he's going to find a way to do it. I'd say, Bud, listen, God bless you. It's all about just execution and success. But it's really hard to find the shortcut unless you really know and you've walked the long road. Only then do you have the perspective of saying, gee, this is a shorter way and I'm still getting where I'm going. So it's a long-winded way of being able to say that technology is so great in so many ways, but maybe our dependence on it, we need to evaluate a little bit and get back to just old school, like putting your arms around somebody, having people over, making a toast over coffee or cocktails or something like that, and enjoying another person's company. I'll share this one other thing with you. In one of my other mentors in broadcasting, a guy by the name of David Saperstein, who founded Metro Networks, which then became part of Westwood One and CBS, and it was the largest single news and traffic network. And he was unbelievably charismatic, and he was a master of relationships. And I thought I was okay. I could tell a joke and slap a back and kiss a baby. And I thought, this is great. And my mouth would be in awe when I would be around him. And we would get in conversations in some of our meetings, group meetings or company meetings. And some of my counterparts would talk about the relationships that they had with their customers. In this case, it was their affiliates, which were radio and television stations that we would sell programming to. And David, with love in his heart, would really ram them, that's not a relationship. That's not a relationship. And everybody would kind of look and say, well, I'll go out to this guy to lunch. We toast. We talk about kids. We do. How can that not be a relationship? And what drummed into my head, and I try to still practice, and I think it's really helped in any success I've enjoyed, is David said, here's just something to think about. When you ask people out to lunch and they say yes, to them it's work. It's the work hours. They have to eat. It's something they have to do. They can go tell their boss, and that's it. But when you ask somebody out for the weekend, when you ask them out for dinner, When you take them out when they're not in the work hours, that is the beginning. And you actually meet their kids and you meet their wife. That's the beginning of a relationship that will take you through turmoil. It's a beginning of a relationship that when you have a great product, it will make it better. And when you have a product that needs to grow, you'll get enough room to be able to spend time to develop it. And that always stuck with me as a measure of this is what a relationship is, the depth of it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting insight, and obviously there's a lot of truth in that. And I think when you read articles about Oculus Rift, which is the virtual reality world that we seem to be going in, it challenges the way humans interact and what brings us together and those bonds and the way we communicate, the way we interact. And soon, again, to your point, you won't even have to go to a museum. You'll be able to put Oculus Rift on and see any gallery in the world from your home. So then the question is, what does happen to the physical world? Not to sound like an alarmist, but that's clearly a question we have to think of. I look at my son who's 2 years old, and I think about how he's going to be interacting, and I'm thinking of the things that he'll think of the advice I give him. Dad, what are you talking about? You had to go out to Scottsdale, Arizona, and spend 3 days with someone on a golf course. That's ridiculous. We just put Oculus Rift on, and we're together. So it is interesting. But it's adapt or die. That's been my mentality since I learned it in the Marine Corps. And I think that we have to, as a society, continue to have some type of information exchange on this. Let's discuss what's acceptable, what's not. I think we should obviously look to those who have had great success in all industries for some type of guidance. Maybe, Benson, people like you and your contemporaries and your peers get together and start to write up some best practices. Start to write up a bill of rights, if you will, something that we could all just look to remind us that this is where business is coming from. This is where our capital infusions are coming from. The companies that employ us today, these are the principles in which they were founded and guided upon. Let's not forget about this. And obviously, we appreciate you sharing them here because that's part of podcasting is making sure that these things go documented and people listen and people are better because of it.
Well, Michael, what I would offer in that, just to highlight that, is, it seems like we live, and I'm just as guilty as everybody, but it seems like we live in a world of immediate gratification. I mean, I always go back with a laugh again to prove my age and how old school I am. Once upon a time, there was a thing called a quip system, and it was the precursor to the very first fax. And it was amazing that you could put a piece of paper in this thing that twirled, and then 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, it would show up on another side, and people would think like, oh my God, this has changed the world. How can this happen? This is impossible. Now, if your phone or your laptop is offline for half a second, if your speed is slow, people take a tizzy fit. And this thought of immediate gratification, I think, God bless, making things happen, delivering results is so key and crucial. But I think that what we're missing is this process. And it's the understanding that everything has a process. You meet somebody, you just don't say, you'll hear stories, but you really hear somebody says, boy, you're beautiful, I love you, I want to marry you right now. I mean, that doesn't happen. In the world of today, that's the way a relationship would happen. It's like, I see you, you see me, let's make it happen because here's all the research and I downloaded this and did this and I saw your profile, you saw my profile, and as a result, we're perfect, so what are we waiting for? But there's an understanding and respect and appreciation for the process, which is like, tell me about your family. Like, gee, I love the way you smile, and boy, I didn't know you were such a great cook, and like, boy, you're kind of clumsy, but that's really lovable. I mean, going through that process to really create an inside-out connection, to really understand what it's like and to learn and to grow is really the adventure. That's the adventure of life. It's so much is gauged now as life makes it on the outcome. You talk about execution and delivery and performance. And in the business world, that's so crucial. But in the world of life, once you've done it, now what? It's part of it is the romance and exercise of breathing the air and making the mistakes. And the mistakes I learned have turned me into whatever I've become. The successes were just a byproduct of it. And, so, as I look at whatever I've accomplished to this point in time, it's not like, well, gee, look what I've done. Now I'm done. It's kind of like, wow, look at how much I've learned. And that knowledge has to go somewhere. I got to do something with it. So that drives me to, keep kind of kicking tires and coming up with ideas and helping out people here and there. So, I'm all in favor for maybe a revisiting of the embrace, romance, and belief in the process. Because no matter what you do in any step, with your children, with your life, with your wife, with your husband, with your business, with building a car, whatever, there's a process involved. The process has to be more than a keystroke on a computer.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And, these expectations are often out of sync, like you said, with reality. And so I think that's what causes a lot of the angst, failure, depression, if you will. People just aren't understanding and appreciating the process. But like you said, the process is what it's really all about, not the outcome.
Yeah.
Another industry that you were in, the payment industry, is another industry that's obviously constantly evolving, new technologies, both good and bad. How did it get to where it is today? I know that's
now you're talking to Father Time. Now I'm really
and that's sort of a very general question. It's like asking the history of the world without Mel Brooks's presence. So, how did it get to where it is today?
Well, first of all, there's a need. So whenever there's a need, it kind of every water finds its own tributaries. It finds its own stream. It will find its own course. So really, it's just kind of mirroring what the consumers, what the public needs, and it's uncovering that as it goes, as it will continue to go. Once upon a time when my partner and I, Steve Street, who now is still the CEO of Green Dot, and I was involved in helping him. It was his idea. He was a genius. He was the brains and I was the bronze. He was a guy who kind of came up with the concept. At the time, the concept, by the way, a Green Dot is we were the first reloadable prepaid debit card sold at retail. And the difference is we didn't invent the debit card. That was done in banks and other financial facilities at that point in time. We were the first to actually take it out of a bank, out of a fixed account, and put it in a retail store where it just hung on a shelf. And there was nothing like it at the time. In fact, at the time, the closest thing to a prepaid business was an occasional new thing called the gift card that you'd see in a retailer. And that was, partly because of our success and the ongoing success of gift cards, did it turn into, now you'll go into many retailers and you'll see these gift card kiosks that has everything from restaurants to food products to, shopping department stores to bank cards and so on and so forth. But when we started, it started with a unique premise in that there was an understanding that we were going to an online world. And in the year 2000, when we launched the company, it goes back to our radio roots. A lot of radio stations were switching to we're not going to be able to we only can make so much money in this business. We have to reach out. Let's use our web presence to make some more money. But if you were a youth-oriented station, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old could not take a $10 bill and stick it through a hard drive. There was no mechanism for a person of youth, unless they went to their parents to get their credit card, to go online and make a purchase of an album or to make a purchase of a T-shirt. Or, in a bigger, broader world, if you were a fashion designer for youth products, if you were Nike, if you were Reebok, if you were somebody targeting a youth audience, how do you bridge geography and get them from their own home to ride this new thing called online commerce? And so we had the good fortune from a timing standpoint, even though we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We kind of hit a vein where people were saying, like, God, we got to figure out how we can get kids to buy online. So myself and Steve, with the best suits we could afford, one overweight and one underweight, and with I look back and laugh with a PowerPoint presentation that if you looked at now, you would think we did with Crayola crayons. We would get into the biggest, I kid you not, Michael, the biggest, I don't even know how, the biggest companies on the planet Earth. You couldn't name one. We would get into it because they had a need, and the need was, how do we do this? Anyways, fast forward, each one of those calls ended up being, we'll give you 10 minutes. It ended up being 3 hours. And then just when we got excited, we couldn't get a second meeting. And what we began to find out was that the reason that we were advancing, we had to solve something. We were advancing and others weren't, because we manufactured, we created this concept, but we made a widget and we didn't think about how it was going to be used. We just said, hey, we got a great thing here. What do you think? And we threw it on the table. And they go, well, it's great. We could use it like this, and we could use it like this, and we can use it like this. But when all is said and done, they didn't have time to chew our food for us. We had to come in with a solution. And then, as opposed to maybe some of the other competitors at the time that just said, hey, take a look at this, and didn't really know much about it, fortunately, we had some retail roots, and we were able to navigate through their language and through the understanding of their cost system and their inventory, and to kind of create that. So as we moved forward in that business, it grew from a Green Dot then grew from a single product, which was a reloadable prepaid MasterCard, to a Visa card, to a reloadable prepaid MasterCard, to then coming up with other products customized for particular uses, whether it be a student card, whether it be an online card, or whether it be whatever the case might be. It then evolved into other areas of payment that you'll see now, where it was debiting for, there was a program that we worked out with H&R Block, where they would people would register and they would get their returns back on a Green Dot card. And there was more, and what we found was the public and the needs for consumers, as they learned about the core essence of the product, they began to say, well, that doesn't work for us, but can you do this? Like, if you had a product that did this, now that's something we'd be interested in, which I cannot speak highly enough about the importance of listening to the market, listening to the consumer, never giving up on your dream, never giving up on, I know this is right and everybody thinks I'm crazy. That's okay. You know, your wife thinks you're crazy, but you live with her. You know, your kids think you're crazy, but you love them to death. All that stuff is good. Don't give up on your thought, but don't dig your heels in and not listen to people. You got to listen to the market. They'll tell you where to go, and they'll actually tell you how they want it, what they'll buy, and how they want to be sold. One of the big things that came to us was very early in our life when we started out as a virtual card for kids to buy online. In our very first launch with Rite Aid, we had 100 stores in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore market. And what we found was that 70% of the cards were purchased by adults. And at first we thought, well, that's probably their parents buying it for them. But as we did a little bit more work into it, and by the way, we didn't have enough money to do focus groups and research. We were like, excuse me, sir, I just saw you bought a card. Can I, we would be out in front of the stores. There was a time early on, I hope Rite Aid isn't listening, but it turned out well for them. Early on where nobody knew what the product was. Nobody would look for it. It wasn't being promoted. It was just a SKU on a hook with a crazy rainbow colored looking card. Nobody would ever know what it is. Never mind walk up to a register, give somebody $50 and walk away. But we're thinking like, wow, we've got all of our money in this. We're down to it. Like, here's our big chance. If this doesn't work, I don't know what we're going to do. By the way, survival is the greatest motivator. Don't run away from it. Embrace it. Embrace survival, because that will really drive you. But the net of it was, for the first 4, 5, 6, 7 days, we didn't make a sale. And now we're looking at each other saying like, can we share that can of beans? I'm hungry. And then we said, we got to do something. So we happen to know, both of us happen to have lived in the Washington area, know people in Washington. We actually, with a couple of bucks we had in our pocket, sent money to them and had them go in and actually seed the market, buy our product, so that when Rite Aid looked at their rotations, they could say like, hey, we just sold some product. And that actually gave us enough time to kind of rethink, rebook, how are we going to promote. That was a great plus for us. But as we were in that test period, we found out that 70% of the consumers who bought it were adults, and that opened us up to what the product has now become, and not much of the industry, but this product in particular, is we introduced us to the unbanked and the credit challenged market.
Huge.
And some people can't understand that market because, one of the biggest challenges when we would try to sell this program into retailers is they would sit back and say, I don't understand. We live in a world now where every day I get 10 envelopes at my door saying, take this credit card, no interest for a year free. And now you're telling me you want somebody to walk into the store with $50, give it to the cashier, walk out with nothing, get something in the mail, and then hope it all shows up and use it. And you want somebody to I don't get it. And what they didn't get was that's not the world that they lived in. They were the fortunate people that got 10 offers every day. But they weren't, and I mean this not as a negative, but in a very positive way, but they weren't the Walmart shopper, the Kmart shopper, the Target shopper. They weren't the mass amount of Americans that have made those stores the leading retailers in the country. You know, single moms, credit challenged people, people with health issues, divorce, all these kinds of things. And so that market, as it became to be, they found out that, like, gee, I don't have a bank account, or I filed bankruptcy and I couldn't get it, and now nobody will underwrite me. You know, they didn't have the luxury of being able to get loans whenever they want. They wanted to take a family away on a trip. How could they do that? They needed a credit card to rent a car. You can't pay cash for a rental car or buying a plane anymore. You don't do that. So that was kind of the precursor of how it turned out, and it's continued to evolve. And now, you know, Green Dot has evolved to having its own online bank, one of the first in the country. It's going to continue to grow in that area. Now their competition in the market is not stabilizing, but it's reaching another plateau where there are some folks that are providing a variety of products in all shapes, sizes, and colors. I think that many people will tend to believe that everything is heading towards the phone. You know, the phone, not unlike everybody on the planet Earth, not unlike snowflakes and your fingerprints, no two people have the same. And that's a great way to zoom in and radar in on people and get them directly, because people have this direct reflex to their phone. And so, you know, I think that as payment mechanisms go, you'll probably see more and more focus and emphasis on what kind of payment mechanisms, how do we stream it, how do we control it, how to protect against fraud, but using phone as the payment mechanism, since it's so much of a part of our bodies now.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer. Even just flying now, I prefer to have my boarding pass on my phone versus having a paper pass. And so I could see the convenience there. Having everything you know, on your phone is certainly great. However, there are major security concerns because NFC technology has its vulnerabilities. But we'll continue, I guess, to observe, you know, as these things transpire and see what actually comes out. But it's certainly amazing.
Michael, what I like to share is that, you know, but think about what you just said. You know, once upon a time, there was no such thing as an airplane kiosk. You had to, like, walk up to the counter and buy it. Then it went to kiosks. Right. Now it's going to phones. I mean, you know, the how technology has streamlined and in many ways made it easier is one of the great benefits of it. And you know, what it will become, who knows? But I don't think it could take on any form. And the beauty of it is that, you know, going back to the caveman days, there was once upon a time, way, way, way back, even before me, where everything was impossible. But yet, as people do something, it no longer is impossible. And so, you know, think about a phone. A phone, how could you make a phone unless it was wired into your wall? And then think about the next phase in your car, and you had this big antenna and this big thing in the middle of your car. And then think about those bricks we used to carry around and, like, how cool we were. And that was just for rich people, because those are the only people who can afford it. And now you think about, regardless of whatever economic range that you're in, you have a phone. That's almost oxygen to people now. And think about the evolution of that, and then that just spurs you on to what will come to be. So when you're asked what's the future is what people want and how fast somebody can come up with a way to deliver it.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is Michael Douglas on Wall Street when he's on the beach and he's talking on that phone, and that thing is gigantic. I mean, it looks like something.
Money doesn't. This is your wake-up call. Money never sleeps.
Yeah, that's right. That's a scene. He has this gigantic phone. I can see the brain tumors growing on his left side of his head. No, so you literally have a lifetime experience of bottom of the ninth. You know, bases juiced, 2 outs. You hit the proverbial home run. So where do you go from there? What are you working on today? What motivates you today?
You know, I'll give you this as a precursor, so just bear with my story for a little bit. There's a great lady in my life who we're spending a lot of time together, and that's giving me a sense of fulfillment. You know, you tend to, anything that's going to grow needs focus, and when you focus something and you're myopic on it, it really is very demanding of your time. And for the first half of my life, I was really drawn into business and focused, and I was seeking this balance. So she always says to me, she says, hey, well, honey, why do you have to work? Why do you have to do anything anymore? Like, you have, you know, you're comfortable. Let's go travel and everything. And I'm like, well, honey, you don't understand. See, when I say seeking balance traditionally in our society means you just work like a maniac and now you got to find a way to find happiness. Well, over the last X amount of years, I've had the good fortune to be out of balance in the total opposite way. I'm just loving my life. I'm just loving my life, but I really do feel disconnected from my DNA, and my DNA is like, now what? I mean, to think that whatever I've been able to do, is it really that the story is written is, and then he made money and lived happily ever after? I mean, is that really what it's supposed to be? And I'm not all that old. You know, I'm 50. I'll be 59. So, so I still have a long way. I think I got a lot of tread still ahead of me. But, and I step back and I say, well, what about all the mistakes that I made? What about all the stuff that I learned? What about all the things that I can share? How can I use that to create it? That's the mission. That's what we were talking about, the process. I've tried to become a student of the process. And if you have a process down, it's you want to duplicate it. And there's a saying that, there's luck and there's skill. And one of the things that separates it is your ability to duplicate success, not just to enjoy it once. Can you do it again? Can you do it again? And whether it be an individual's own personal challenge or a flaw in their life or whatever the case might be, I still feel that challenge now. And up until now, it's been tapped. I've gotten involved in a lot of philanthropic endeavors. I've gotten involved in a lot of mentoring, in giving back. But there is one project and I've also come to understand how bad an investor I am, how smart a business I am, and how unbelievably poor an investor I am. I've touched gold and it's turned into wheat. I mean, it's just, I don't know what's happened with that. So I don't really touch that anymore. And I've come to believe that I actually probably am better off doing something on my own that I can be hands-on in rather than just looking at projections and estimates of what other people can do. So with that, I'm actually really stoked and excited about this new venture that I'm going to get into. And it's actually introducing a program that's a traditional option, that is a contemporary option to traditional marriage. And so it's reinventing marriage. Well, I wouldn't say reinventing marriage, but here's the platform. When over 50% of your customers don't show up at your door the next day, your business goes bankrupt. Marriage, as much as I treasure it, and this program is all about maintaining, building, growing, deeper relationships with more long-term return. It's just not working the way it was designed to, for whatever reason. And it then leads you to like, well, why not? Well, when I walk into a 7-Eleven and I see that there are 8 different options to just buy bottled water, right? 24 different packs of gum, 18 beef jerkies, 8 flavors of Slurpees, right? And then I think, I'm an adult, and this is the planet Earth. What options do I have for a relationship? I have 3. I'm single, I live with somebody, or I'm married. And, marriage has been under this, this holier-than-thou kind of thing, and it should be honored and treasured, and that's all part of it. But what about happiness? And what about longevity? And what about connection? And again, as you look at the world, it's ironic we're having, it's not ironic, but goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's what's the process? I mean, do people, even in their relationships, have an understanding and respect for the process anymore? Or is it like, you're beautiful, you got a great car and a great job. I'm beautiful, I got a great car and a great job. We're going to make beautiful kids who's going to be the president of the United States. We're going to be a power couple. It's meant to be. Look at our families. Oh, isn't that a funny story how we met? I love you till death do us part. Kind of, sort of. Where's the Roman? Where's the where's the process? Tell me about what do you think about religion? What do you think about, do you want to be buried or do you want to be cremated? What about all the deep things that in a relationship? So I think we're going to kind of investigate that. The program itself really, by the way, let me preface it by this. By no way, shape, or form am I the spokesperson for great relationships. I'm not the Dr. Phil of relationships. I'm not the guy that's going to be able to look and say, like, oh, I've been married 50 years. That is not the case. But what we're creating is a template. We're creating a process. We're creating a formula that whatever information 2 people plug in, It will empower them to come up with their own decisions of what they want their relationships to be. They get to make their own rules within the guise of legal and whatever. And it's really built in the concept of something that there's very little of nowadays in anything, preventive maintenance. It's a program built on the platform of how can we start addressing some things before we have to get into crisis management? How can we put out the match on the floor before it turns into a roaring blaze where fire engines have to come and people die? How do we get to it before that happens? And I think even though I don't have the scientific or academic background, I've been in relationships, I've talked to a lot of people, and I think that what this program will do is, I don't know that it will ever get to the promised land, but it will start a conversation that my hope will get people rethinking their relationships from transactional moments, from transactional transactions to lifelong relationships. I mean, think about this. If a program like this, forget about this program, if a program like this, what happens if it affected in a positive way 0.5% of the people who go through divorce? I mean, what does that mean not only for the couple, for their kids, for their families, for the future, for their kids' belief in the future? So I think that
you're popular.
Well, the interesting thing about all this is that if you're looking at it as a business, anything worth doing, it's more of a entrepreneurial, a social entrepreneurial venture. But if you think about it, this is one of the very few things where there's 100% audience share. I mean, there's not a person on the planet, there's not a person in the country that won't sit back and have a specific opinion on marriage. Why they should, why it shouldn't, why it will work, why it won't, why they did, why they didn't. But if I was just introducing a new flavor of yogurt, people would say, like, I don't like lemon, who cares? But this is 100% buy-in.
Yeah, and I think that if you get, and again, I'm just trying to conceptualize everything you shared, and I want to learn more, but it seems as though that you're getting back to the root of what, again, made you effective at sales is communication, understanding, constant information exchange, and remaining aware and cognizant of the other person, understanding what you're going through together. And then as the process, and certainly it is a process, as the process evolves, that you continue to reevaluate, your positions, your points, the values, the analytics, if you will, because it's a continuous change, a continuous evolution. And it's not easy, especially for those of us out there who are running our own business, because as you know, you can become super focused on just one thing and justify your focus because you're taking care of your family. And those things, become neglected. So hopefully there's some type of option in there for those of us who are married to our companies as well as to a wonderful person.
Yeah, well, let me also offer this just to show the legs. I mean, I know that it's one of the, the reason I have comfort in this space so much, because not unlike a reloadable prepaid debit card there was never such a thing. Right. So it's not, now we're going to have to create an entire language. You're going to have to create a China understanding. You're going to have to, this is the way people traditionally do things. You're going to have to juxtapose people's habits or people's perceptions and find a way to put them back together in a way that they look at it differently with a smile as opposed to with a challenge. And, but if you look at something like this and you would just, we can end it with this, but and I know it's hard to embrace because there's not the language right now and there's nothing to relate it to. But the legs on something like this, because of its social implication, start with something as challenging, but as simple as maintaining a loving, lasting relationship of deep intimacy and communication, all the way to maybe for the first ever parental certification. Maybe for the first time ever, two people, before they talk about how their kid's going to be president of the United States and how handsome or beautiful he's going to be, or she's going to be, they start talking about how do we want to bring the kid up and what's the best means. And gee, this is great. But all of a sudden it's the first night the baby's home and the husband says, put him in the crib, and the wife says, wait a minute, I want him in bed with me. Well, that's when it starts. And nobody had that conversation. Nobody thought like, well, what about when the baby cries? What are we going to do? Everybody's busy thinking about immediate gratification. It's going to be great and wonderful. What about the process? Like, what about the process? So maybe we can not make it process loud where people think this is rigid and I want to have a life and you want us to follow this plan. That's not what it's about. But it's to put process into our normal lives and respect it. Like, this is the way things roll out. You know, here are some conversations to have, not just to get it's not about getting the answer. It's also, how does this person I'm with think? Which then gives me some sense of, wow, when we get into future discussions, I'll know that. I won't knee-jerk react or get defensive or get funny or get, you know, how I'm learning about this person in a far deeper, more enriched way to build a far greater bond for myself and family.
So you do have the entrepreneurial bug. It's going nowhere. It's going to be there for the rest of our lives is basically what you're telling us. So even when we have the opportunity to rest and enjoy the fruits of our labor, it's never going to leave us. It hasn't left you, clearly.
Well, you know, pick a sport. You know, if you golf, there's always another course to play on. If you get a boat, somehow you always get a bigger one the next time around. If you play tennis, well, you know, you're always trying to get, you know, there's always something that you're setting your sights on. And if it's in your DNA, by no means is anything I'm doing a measurement of what's right or wrong, but this feels right for me, as everybody should seek what's right for them. And for me, it's finding a balance between, you know, the thing that keeps me, however my mind works, however young my mind thinks, however young I feel, it's the exercising of my brain and the being in the culture and observing and chatting with people of all ages and the comfortability with that really continues to, that's the driver of your entrepreneurialism. Somebody throws out an idea and go, well, that's just kind of like this. Hey, did you ever think about this? I never thought about that. You know, when Vaseline says everybody uses it to kind of, because they have chapped skin, and somebody says, wow, you know, it's interesting when you put Vaseline on, the water beads up. Hey, I wonder if you could repackage it, sell it in yacht stores, and use it to waterproof gaskets. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, are you a genius or are you just living life?
And observing.
And you realize there's observing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it's about.
Taking it in. Yeah, it's that, but also obviously the younger guys like myself, I do appreciate having access to mentors such as yourself because it means a lot. Think back, you know, when you're in your office and you feel by yourself, this can be a very lonely occupation. To hear people share their stories, to share their experience, to give you words of advice, words of encouragement, that's part of the cycle. Those who gave that to you, you're giving back to people like me, and it's my obligation when I become of age to share that wisdom, and I hope the person it's become like a tradition. It's become almost like a very exclusive club, and obviously we have to keep it filled with good people. One of the things that I think makes you one of the many reasons why you're a great mentor, and I see it when you're interacting with student entrepreneurs, is your experience, is your ability to see things retrospectively and share those life lessons. But you have to be very impressed with the students today, the student entrepreneurs today. How is today's entrepreneur different from the stereotypical entrepreneur, the entrepreneur perhaps portrayed in a movie or portrayed by the media?
Well, it seems to me, I'm starting to get a lot more involved with students, and just enjoy that process. It's entrepreneurialism at its purest level, and there's a learning curve, and that's where maybe some of the lessons I've learned I can share with listening ear. But one of the things that seems to be consistent throughout is today's entrepreneur seems to have a far more global understanding, a far more global appeal, a far more global interest. Many are leaning towards more social enterprises as opposed to commercial. Not to say that people don't want to create a new widget that saves the world, but there's a lot of third world country kinds of things. Ironically enough, I was having lunch with a student here yesterday who was traveling, and he was from Mozambique, and he was going to school at the University of Tampa, the entrepreneurial program. And I didn't understand half the stuff he was saying, but it was brilliant. And he was talking in such an educated way about his theory of hydroponics and how his goal was to be able to create products, consumer products, or even commercial products that can be put in homes of third world countries or poverty-ridden people to allow them to have a healthy life in an affordable way. And, I think back to my entrepreneurial roots, and it was like, hey, how about an edible spoon? That would be great.
Made of cookies.
How about having silverware that, rather than throwing it out, you actually can take care of what, like you can eat it. That would be great.
Or a fork and a spoon in one, called a spork.
A spork, yeah. I mean, that was my kind of thing. And so I've noticed that they also are driven in a, what I will say going back earlier, I see benefit in it, but it's also a concern is they also are really driven exclusively to technology. And it's very, very few. When you talk to them, they'll be able to give you a great business plan, and they'll be able to give you a great theory and show you all the research. But their ability to actually communicate that information in a way that maintains your attention, the ability to actually take that information, as I talked before in my journey with Green Dot, we didn't create a widget. We try to find the solution. And we sold to that solution, not we have this great product. So it's less about I'm just created this thing, and let me show you why this thing is going to work. But because of their just time on the planet and exposure, they haven't maybe had the opportunity or been in an environment to really appreciate and embrace the concept of how is this being perceived? How do I sell it in? How do we interact? Do I feel this product? Am I living this product? What is this product? Do I stand? What do I stand for? I don't know that I hear a lot about, maybe a little bit more, but I don't know that I hear a lot about business ethics. I hear a lot about business acumen. I hear a lot about business style. But the tough decisions and how do you make that decisions? And are you going to sell your soul to the devil, or are you going to be true to yourself? And, you always get this I'm almost pregnant kind of thing. Like, yeah, well, I'll do this just so I can get to this, and then I'll be good after that. And what they don't know is, you take one puff of the cigarette and you're smoking the rest of your life. That's just the way it is. Or not. I don't know. I don't know. But I think that I do commend today's student. There's a lot of information. They're great at disseminating information. They're great at running through. They're great at packaging information. They have a kind of pure, they have their own, but because of how they were brought up, their own spin on what we think is our reality. And that juxtaposition gives them an opportunity to look at things in a different way from their perspective. This is where their naivete comes to play, where they can look at something and say, well, why does it have to be that way? Why can't we just do it like this? And that. So I think that I'm very optimistic about them. I see some of the great things that they're doing. Some of these concepts and ideas and businesses they're starting at the age they're in is just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. And I also think they also are now born into an era, as opposed to maybe back old school with me, where you can look at somebody that's 18 or 19 or 25, and because you can look back and you see a lineage of others that age having success, that makes you stand up to the plate and say, like, I can do that. I don't know that that was as much a part of my lifetime. When I was in school, it was like, you're a kid, what do you know?
Right.
And now some of the largest companies in the world go after kids still in school because their mind is fresh and clear and their ability to digest and dissect and disseminate. So I think there's some great benefits ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually very aware of the student you're speaking of and that hydroponic product. And one of the things I think that the social entrepreneurship focus is certainly being taught. It's being fostered in the universities. And it's a good thing because the world has obviously a multitude of problems that have to be addressed. So what better way to address them the way that perhaps Bill and Melinda Gates have addressed them? But what I remind these student entrepreneurs, and I remind myself every day, is that you have to be a profitable company first. You have to be able to take care of yourself, and your team first in order to be socially responsible. That's like the most socially responsible thing you could do, is to employ yourself and employ others. But focus on getting to profitability first, because Bill Gates was thinking about becoming profitable before he thought about inoculizing, Africa. So it's something that I think is being taught in the universities, but that's where us as board members on some of these universities have to get with some of the professors who, again, some are teaching in theory, some are teaching in practicality, but keeping them with one foot in reality. You've got to be profitable first before you can help others. But we do see a lot of ideas. There's no shortage of ideas. What's your advice to someone who's sitting on an idea that's just an idea on paper? What's their next few moves?
Well, everybody has a different approach, but I'm a big believer in having a partner. I'm a big believer in having somebody, whether it's a direct partner legally, whether it's a partner socially, whether it's whatever, somebody that you can confide in, somebody that you can talk to, somebody you can bounce off ideas, somebody who can be blatantly direct, somebody that when you're feeling beat up will rise you, when you're dry on ideas will be a sponge to quench you, where you're not feeling, being an entrepreneur, dealing with all the things that they do, whether it be financing or challenges or manufacturing or figuring out an issue, to do that by yourself with no help is done. It's done every day. But maybe with somebody else who is like-minded, or maybe not like-minded, but you have a common bond of how you want to run your business or what you want to do. I think that there's a benefit to being able to get some support. I think it helps you mentally. I think it helps you physically. I think it helps you emotionally. I think that's a huge part of it. I'm a big believer as well as, this is, some people don't, I do. When you have an idea at the beginning stages of it, there are some folks that say, well, gee, I got to protect it. I can't talk to anybody because they'll steal it. Do you really think that Google is steering, has my room bugged thinking like, gee, what's Benson coming up with today? That's not the way it works, even though I understand the thought behind it. And what I think is really beneficial is enrolling folks in your ideas and getting us a true sense of what people think. So chatting with people about it, not making it a secret, reaching out saying like, hey, I got this crazy idea. Tell me what you think about it. Hey, do you know anybody that manufactures this? I'm trying to, hey, have you ever heard of something that looks like this? And so I'm a big believer in really, again, going back to old school, communication, personal interaction. Because so much is based on your own beliefs. So much is based on your own confidence. So much is based on your own perception. When you as an entrepreneur see something that other people don't, people are going to think that you're crazy. And what I've come to find out, which is true to me, because I am half crazy, is honest to goodness, when I was 20, aside from having less hair, a goatee, and more wrinkles in my eyes, I don't know that I'm dramatically that different a person as I was then. And I came up with some of the most craziest ideas that people would say, Benson, I know you're an only child, but enough already, right? This is crazy. I would come up with these ideas and people would think I was nuts. And it's interesting. It really took one success or to get that job where I became like the manager or the mentor. It just took that little bit of credibility to turn my crazy ideas into like, wow, did you hear what Benson just said? That sounds awesome. And the story goes back to, that story isn't about Benson. The story is about a person's belief is in, how people perceive it. Dig in, believe, get support for that, stay strong. And then what happens is you'll enjoy success. And that success is going to breed more success. That success is going to make you an advocate. There's not much that Bill Gates or any other industry leaders wouldn't say that people now, would think Steve Jobs. How many folks said, like, this guy's nuts? Like, how can it be? But he saw it, and he saw it. And no matter how much people said, forget it, it started with his vision. So, it's your belief that you have in yourself, the confidence that you have in yourself. Sometimes you need other people to support you in that. Sometimes you need somebody to say, like, I see what you're saying. That's not a bad idea. And that's why trying to hide your invention, maybe it's more beneficial to share it and get other people's. You don't have to be the author of the entire book. You know, but it can be in your words and in your way, and you'll develop it. So, you know, reach out for other ideas, get help, and understand that you're not the only one that has the answer.
Yeah, and if you don't believe in it, no one else is going to believe in it. So I don't know how people to expect to get beyond that. Listen, I can't say enough times. Thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate everything you shared with us today. Maybe we could check back in when your new venture progresses, and we could perhaps listen to some of your theories and tests.
And nothing would make me happier to do that. And you know, I'm stuck in this thing again, out of balance, in that, like, I cannot tell you how passionate I am about this. I mean, this is going to sound a little crazy off the deep end, but you know, people always wonder, what are you on the planet to do? Like, you know, like, is there a bigger mission for me or whatever? And I have the sense that something like I'm supposed to be doing this at this point in time. I don't know what that exactly means. That's just a sense I have. And so the frustration is that I'm just enjoying life and not get, you know, my life is out of balance on one side and I want to kind of get to it. But I think that, you know, that passion is going to drive me to continue, and I would welcome chatting it. And I also, you know, whenever there's an opportunity to tell people what I'm working on, I want to tell them, because that is another thing that an entrepreneur can do. The more that you share with people, the more you become accountable to that. I've just shared it with you and your audience. And so now when you bump into me tomorrow, 8 months from tomorrow, 10 years from tomorrow, one of the things that might come up is, hey, what's going on with your program? If it's a secret nobody knows, that allows me to work on my timetable.
Yeah.
That drives me to say, I got to move forward.
And I think that's why a lot of people don't share their ideas. A lot of people keep their secrets because they don't want the rejection. They don't want the accountability. They don't want to have to provide the same update.
Right.
How many times we run into people, and we see them almost every day, where they've got that idea, they're going to do something, and then you check in with them, and they don't do anything about it. And then a year later, it's a second idea, third idea. By that third one, their personal brand suffers, the consequences. And that's someone who's not a person of action. I think that you're conscious of that. You want to be a man of action. You have always been a man of action.
I want to be held accountable to it, because left to my own devices, I might slack. And that keeps showing. But it's funny you say that, because how many people on the planet Earth at 3 a.m. are watching television, seeing that Snuggie commercial where you put yourself in that little envelope, zip it up? How many of those people do you think are saying, son of a gun, they stole my idea?
Yep. They
stole my idea. And what I've come to find, which is why I believe and understand I'm a bad investor, is this. It's not coming up with $1 million idea. That actually is the easy part. It's the execution of it. Everybody will have an idea in their life that will make them millions, change the world, and whatever. How many people will actually find a way to put that into production, will find a way to make that happen? That is one of the big differences. It's the execution of it, not just the dream. But again, if you find a partner, if you find friends, if you find guidance, if rather than making it a secret that you hold dear, if you open it up to the world, you might find that the thing that's most important to you, that will make a difference to the planet Earth, that you've come up with, can be enacted, because you've sought out some help, you've found people that will endorse you, you've enrolled people in the concept, and it's gone to grow. So with that, certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and share with your audience, and I would love to update you when I have something to update. And please, everybody, hold me accountable. Don't let me off the hook. Don't let me have a good life.
We'll hold you accountable. We'll check in for a status report soon.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Betsy, thank you very much.
Okay, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Centurion 360 podcast. Follow us on Twitter @Centurion360. Until the next episode.